The war between Israel and Hamas was ignited on October 7, 2023, but the fuse traces back through a mix of calculated regional strategies and decades of historical grievances. To understand this conflict, we have to look past the immediate military triggers and examine the underlying geopolitical math. The catalyst was a massive surprise attack. On the morning of October 7th, Hamas and allied militant groups breached the border from the Gaza Strip, using explosives and bulldozers, advancing under the cover of thousands of rockets. The human toll was immediate and severe. Approximately 1,200 people, mostly civilians, were killed, and roughly 250 individuals were taken hostage back into Gaza. Israel declared a state of war the very next day, initiating a massive and widespread aerial bombing campaign across the Gaza Strip. This was followed by a large-scale ground invasion. The Israeli government's stated military objectives were direct: dismantle Hamas as a governing and military power and rescue the remaining hostages. These opening maneuvers set the physical reality of the war and established the opposing absolute objectives for the crisis. But the justifications cited by Hamas point to deeply entrenched local conditions. They highlighted the long-standing Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip and the broader ongoing military occupation of the West Bank. They also pointed to ongoing tensions surrounding the status of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, citing perceived desecrations of the site as a specific trigger for the violence. Add to this the continued imprisonment of thousands of Palestinians and a documented rise in settler violence across the West Bank. These local flashpoints served as the immediate ideological fuel required to mobilize militants for the October attack. However, zooming out reveals a wider calculation. Before the attack, Israel and Saudi Arabia were actively negotiating to normalize diplomatic relations. Hamas leaders indicated their intent was to aggressively disrupt what they called the normalization train. Strategically, they also saw an opportunity to re-establish their revolutionary credentials globally, countering a perceived decline in support among Palestinians. It was a tactical calculation aimed at provoking a massive Israeli military response, which could then be exploited to shift international opinion and apply diplomatic pressure. The attack functioned as a deliberate geopolitical maneuver, calculated to fracture shifting regional alliances by forcing a massive strategic reset in the Middle East. Still, even these regional calculations rest on an older foundation. The current violence is the latest acute escalation of a struggle dating back to the early 20th century. At its bedrock, this conflict remains about competing claims to the same land, the right to statehood, unresolved borders, and the physical security of both populations. As long as those core foundational issues remain unresolved, the underlying conflict defies a purely military solution.